أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق النجم الثاقب إن كل نفس لما عليها حافظ فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب إنه على رجعه لقادر يوم تبلى السرائر فما له من قوة ولا ناصر والسماء ذات الرجع والأرض ذات الصدع إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا فمهل الكافرين أمهلهم رويدا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس صدق الله العظيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, we're on. Today is the last talk on this series. And it brings us to Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, which are known as the Mu'awwadhatayn. Of course, to speak about these two surahs in the little bit of time that we have is not possible. But inshallah, I thought I would point out a couple of things about it that are very interesting and some lessons that we can learn from it as well, inshallah. So let me share my screen. Bismillah. So before we talk about these two surahs, both of them are Madani. There are some opinions that they may have also been revealed in Mecca and Mecca Mukarramah before Hijrah, but the strongest opinion is that they're both Madani and that they were revealed at the same time. So in reality, if you look at the subject material between the two surahs, it's the same. So it's as if they're one surah. They were the same subject material, revealed at the same time, the same sabab al-nuzul, but they are two separate surahs. The first part has a slightly different message in it, and the second part has a slightly different message in it as well. Inshallah, we'll talk about both of those. So the reason for the revelation of these two surahs is that one time a person had done magic, sihr, on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the effect of that magic was that he felt like he did something when he had in fact not done that. There was no altering of his mental status. There was no difficulty in his speech. There was no effect on his intelligence, none of that. And it brings us to an interesting point. Can sihr, can magic be done upon a prophet? And more specifically, can it be done upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now, the answer is, of course, yes, because it's an agreed upon. There's a hadith on this topic about the revelation of Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, which are found in Bukhari, Muslim, and in all of the major books of hadith. They have been rigorously authenticated, sahih without a doubt, and its rejection is unheard of except for maybe one or two throughout history. And those people, for the most part, belong to a deviant group called the Mu'tazila. So, but the thing to know is that the prophets are human beings, and they are affected by all of the asbab that we are affected by, almost all of them. They fall sick like we fall sick. We can get a virus, they too can get a virus. We can get ill and die, they too can get ill and die. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects them, but the protection is meant to protect hidayah, to protect the wahi, to protect the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to convey to us from himself. So in that way, the prophets cannot be affected in such a way where it would cause some sort of deficiency or untrustworthiness within the wahi itself. The background story is that the Prophet ﷺ had this sihr done on him, and he felt the effect of it. And for months, he didn't know what to do about it. He would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show him the situation and how to come out of it. So one night, while he was sleeping, two angels came in the form of men. One stood at his head, the other stood at his feet, and the Prophet ﷺ could hear them and see them. The one who stood at the feet said to the one who stood at the head that, "What is wrong with this person?" And the other one responded saying that magic was done on him. And so after that, he asked afterwards, "So, what can we do about this?" And so how was it done? Was the question that the angel asked the other angel. And so he replied saying that there was a person named Labid ibn A'sam who was a munafiq. He used to be a Yahud. He pretended to become a Muslim. And so he is the one who did the magic on him. So the angel actually described this to the other angel, and the Prophet ﷺ was hearing about all this at the same time. So as he heard it, he found out what happened to him. He found out how it happened, and that way he could learn how to undo it. Inshallah, we'll talk about that. So before we do that though, this person, Labid, he was a munafiq. He and his daughter pretended to be Muslims. In fact, he would come to the masjid regularly. He would perform salah with the other Muslims. So outwardly, he seemed like a legit Muslim. He seemed like a legit companion. But he was there for other reasons. He wanted to come and he wanted to become close to the companions. He wanted to become trusted by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they did. They trusted him because they saw the consistency that he had in coming to the masjid. So right away, one lesson that's very obvious here, that a Muslim trusts another believer outwardly. And especially a level of trust is whether or not that person is coming to the masjid, whether they're regular at the masjid. Because it's very difficult for a munafiq to continue to be regular at a masjid. Or it's very difficult for someone with weak iman to continue to come regularly to the masjid. So somebody who makes the effort despite their job, despite their family, despite all the other things that they have to come to the masjid, then that person is showing that they have a true commitment and that their iman is strong. So anyway, for Labid to do this magic, he needed a personal item from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as he was there for some time and he developed that trust among the other people, he requested from one of the children who was a khadim of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said to him, "I would really love to see something of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam." And so he requested him to get a comb for him. So the khadim, he went and he got a comb that had some of the hair of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that comb. And so Labid used that to do magic on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to do his sihr. An interesting thing about it is, eventually what would happen is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have the sihr removed, but he never declared publicly who did the sihr on him. He never declared to everyone that it was Labid who had done it. There were a small group of people that knew. For example, this hadith is authenticated rigorously, meaning it's sahih without a doubt, from Aisha radiallahu anha. So she knew about it. And then she narrated the hadith to other people and they knew about it. And this hadith has also been narrated by other companions within other companions who also would narrate a different version from their perspective, but they would mention it without the name Labib because it wasn't known to everybody. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, those who knew, Ya Rasulullah, why don't you out this person, this munafiq? Why don't you declare him to be a munafiq, kick him out, and make it known to everyone that this is the cause of your sihr and this is what happened? But the Prophet ﷺ did refuse to do it. In fact, the reply he gave was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me shifa, and I don't want to cause another person difficulty, even though it was the person who caused him difficulty. It was that person who caused him to become sick through sihr. The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm fine, alhamdulillah, Allah gave me shifa, there's nothing more that needs to be done. Because if the Prophet ﷺ were to speak about him, then people would either kill him, speak ill of him, or cause him some other sort of difficulty. And the Prophet ﷺ never allowed another person to have any difficulty come to them because of himself. Nor did he ever take revenge upon another person for himself. For the sake of Allah, that's different. But for himself, he never did that. So let's talk a little bit briefly about magic. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it is something today that people have a very difficult time grasping. You know, there's some things that are very clear. The sabab, the cause of it is very clear, it's very, very visible to everybody. And then there's other things where the cause is hidden. Only people who have a specialization in that field will know about it, or they've done research in that field. So for example, you might have a plant in your backyard, and from that plant is derived certain medications. You look at the plant every single day and you're like, it's a plant. It may even be a weed. You're like, you may even be trying to get rid of it. You don't know anything about it. Whereas a person who has an expertise in pharmacology or medication may come by and say, this drug, this plant is a cure for such and such. This plant, we derive medication from it for this and that. So although the sabab, the effect of that plant was always there, we being lay people would look at it and say, oh, it's just a plant. It can't do anything. Whereas a person who has a specialization in the field would look at it and say, no, there is something more to it than meets the eye. Similarly with magic, magic is not a field that is known to everybody. We look at it and we say outwardly, we don't see anything. To our eye, there's nothing there. And so especially in this time and age where everything is basically based upon science and upon that sort of approach to understanding the world, then anything else is just rejected outright. Whereas the truth is that magic has an effect. Sihr has an effect. And those effects are not ghaibi, meaning they're not something that is supernatural, but rather they have an effect and a cause that is known to the people who specialize in it. So one of the examples that the scholars often give is that one of the ways that magic has an effect is through the effect of words on a person. The effect of words is not obvious, meaning you can't say, okay, this caused this, which caused this, which caused this. You can't follow the cause and effect of it, but it has an effect. So for example, I can say something to you at first that might just annoy you. I said a word. The word doesn't do anything to you, but it does elicit a response from you. Then I say something else and you become angry. The color in your face changes. Then I say something else and at that point you get up and you hit me. Every sentence that I said had an effect. There was no obvious effect on the outside. It was more of a hidden effect, just to give us an understanding, not exactly the same. Oftentimes, sihr can be done in this way. Sihr can also be done through the use of shayateen jinn. So the point being is that it's not something supernatural. It's not something that happens in a way that is unexplainable. It's not a miracle, but it is something that has its cause and effect to it. And so it's one step that leads to another step. It's just that we don't have that knowledge, or at least normal people don't have that knowledge. There are people still who do practice this to a certain degree. Another way to think about it is the whole role of media and advertising today. That it is a science that is designed to elicit a certain response out of you. It is a science designed to make you do something. And you may not even be aware that you're doing it because of what you saw or what you heard or the advertisement that you came across. But in fact, that is what does it, because we know through studies that certain advertising campaigns and words can cause people to behave in a very predictable way. But the real question here is, who is the cause when sihr happens to someone? what is the cause of that sihr? Is the actual cause the sahir, the one who's doing the magic? Or is the actual cause Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And of course, we know that the ultimate cause is Allah. So if He wills something to happen, it's going to happen. For example, we can't say that all prophets are immune from sihr, because as I had mentioned, sihr has a physical effect to it. But we know that there were many, many prophets that were killed in the past. There were prophets that were made physically sick, like Sayyidina Ayyub alayhi salam. We know that they can be killed through external means. And in the same way, they can be affected by sihr as well if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it. So it's really not that much different from getting a physical illness from the perspective of the Prophet. Meaning, our Prophet, our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he became ill. He suffered severe hunger. He was poisoned. And ultimately, he passed away as well. And this was all done through external means, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And same way with sihr as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promised to protect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, it comes in the seerah that the companions used to wait outside of the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to stand guard to protect him at night. And then one of the causes of revelation for these two surahs is that when it was revealed at nighttime, and as the Prophet ﷺ was given these two surahs, he realized, I have no need for these guards anymore. These two surahs will protect me from now on. And after that, no one was appointed to stand guard for him anymore because it was unnecessary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took responsibility for protecting him. So what it amounts to, just as I'm taking a very big topic and I'm trying to say it in a couple sentences so that people who might have some sort of contention immediately when they hear about sihr, that you can put that to the side. It's not something, it is something that the believers have believed in from the time of the Prophet ﷺ up until today without any real legitimate reason not to. And this is the opinion of everybody. So it's not even, except for a small group of people who we consider to be deviants in either that way or other ways instead. But what it amounts to is that there's essentially two kinds of sihr. One, sihr causes an effect on the physical body, and another sihr causes an effect on the mind to the point of insanity. So an effect of the sihr on the body, and another kind of sihr which causes an effect of insanity on the mind. So the Prophet ﷺ was protected from the latter kind. He was protected from anything that would alter his sanity, his mode of thinking. But it didn't mean that he couldn't be affected by the first kind, meaning sihr can still affect him physically, but what is impossible is that it have any kind of impediment or effect on the wahi and the thinking of the Prophet ﷺ, in that he would be like an insane person. And in fact, this is what the kuffar used to allege of him before as well. When they said that he was someone who was mashur, that he was affected by magic, what they meant by that is that he's insane. That you want to follow this person is mashur, meaning that sihr has caused him to lose his sanity. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him from that type of sihr. For example, there are some physical illnesses that can cause a person to lose their mind, that can cause them to become insane. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the prophets from those type of physical illnesses, because in protecting them from that, He is protecting hidayah. He is protecting wahi. And what is impossible is that the wahi be affected to the point that we cannot trust what we receive from the Prophet or any of the prophets. So inshallah, why don't we take a quick break right here, and then I'll come right back.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother Safiullah, brothers and sisters. Usually we meet in the last 10 days in MCMC working on big projects, alhamdulillah. This year we also had the same plan, but we have to rush to come back from Medina Munawwara because our son Muhammad Safiullah passed away. May Allah give him Jannat al-Firdaus. Now we are establishing an orphanage on his name in Peshawar. Please help us donate to that cause. The link is given and the detail is given. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The best part of Ramadan may still be ahead. Its final days and final hours are Miskul Khitam, the musk that seals it all, the crowning touch. Don't miss out on that. Make sure that you pay your zakat, if you usually do in Ramadan. Make sure that you pay your zakat al-fitr or fitrah before the time for Salatul Eid. Remain as enthusiastic as you started. Keep up your i'tikaf. Laylatul Qadr, with all of its blessings and rewards, is probably still awaiting you, and your sincerity and ibadah may be the cause of relief for all the world from the coronavirus.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So as I was mentioning, that when we think about sihr and its effect on the prophets, we don't think about it as being any different than the effect of a physical illness, because both of them have their asbab. They both have their causes. And in both situations, the prophets will always be protected from having any illness to them that would cause any possibility of not being able to trust the wahi. And so here the Prophet ﷺ was affected, but again, it's not something that we have any issues with. So, another lesson to be learned here when we look at the labid is that if a person comes and they have no intent for hidayah, and their heart, that's not what they're there for. Even if they may be sitting in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, even if they may be praying behind the Prophet ﷺ every single day, then hidayah will not benefit that person. That person's heart will not open for it if that's not what he is there for. So whenever we approach the deen, we need to be there with that intent, that we are here to, with our hearts open for it to hidayah. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide me towards, this is what I want. So sometimes you'll find people that they will learn the deen, all of it maybe, but their purpose was never to serve deen. Their purpose was never to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to serve something else or someone else. And they might become an alim of the deen, but their heart never absorbed any of it. They speak beautifully, they quote Quran and a hadith and opinions of the scholars and all of that, but their heart never opened to it because they were never there for that purpose. They may have been there for their own selves, for their own benefit, for their own riya and kibr and whatever the cause may have been. So if they come to the deen with that in their heart, then hidayah will never settle in it. I had mentioned last week about being very cautious about how we use our youth in speaking about deen, that a tarbiyah needs to take place for them before we just have them go up and start speaking, or before we have them just learn the deen, or as they learn the deen, so that their hearts are open for hidayah, because that's what's important. Whether they speak or don't speak, that's not important, that's secondary. So we ourselves, as well as our youth, as well as everybody who comes to the deen, whether they be new Muslims or old Muslims, born or converted, it doesn't matter. If the heart is not there for hidayah, they will not benefit themselves and they will likely harm other people as well. So how did Labid do this magic? He put 11 knots into a thread, and he put it under a stone in a well in a particular place. And so when the angels were speaking with one another, they said that this is what happened and this is where it's located. So upon awakening, the Prophet ﷺ went with his companions to the well, and they mentioned that the well itself, the water was red, and some places that it was kind of boiling looking, like blood. And they reached into it, they found the thread, and the thread itself, being underwater, was very wet, and it was next to impossible to take out the knots out of the thread. I mean, if you take like a little thread and put it underwater for a while, you'll know that it becomes difficult to do that with it. It becomes brittle. So as the Prophet ﷺ was trying to undo it, these two surahs were revealed, and together the surahs have 11 ayat. And so one ayah for every knot, as the Prophet ﷺ was reciting, each knot will come undone. Recite the first one, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ, then that knot will come undone. And the next ayah, and so on until he finished both surahs, and the thread has completely undone, and the Prophet ﷺ immediately started to feel better. So This hadith, the hadith that speaks about this event in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, shows its benefit at that particular situation. There are other ahadith that say that the Prophet ﷺ would recite these two surahs regularly every single night. In some other ahadith, it mentions that he would recite Surah Al-Kafirun first, and then Surah Al-Ikhlas, and then Surah Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, and then he would blow on his hands and he would wipe it over his entire body as a way of protection. When he was in the illness that he would eventually pass away from, the Prophet ﷺ was too weak to do this on his own, and so Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, she would do this for him. She would take his blessed hands, recite the two surahs, blow it onto his hands, and then take his hands and wipe it over his body. I mean, she could have done it with her own hands, but because the hands of the Prophet ﷺ had more barakah in it, she did it that way instead. So these two surahs have a tremendous protective effect. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said that if people knew the benefits of these two surahs, if they realized it, if they actually realized it, then that they would realize that it is more important than the daily food, water, and air that we breathe. You know, if we don't get our air or we don't get our water, we'll just die. But without these two surahs, the effect of the evils of this world will be in this dunya, and they will continue into the akhirah, and that is much worse than simply dying here. So what Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah was pointing out was a very important principle, that the protection of life is not the end all of this deen. Let me say that again. A lot of people misunderstand. This deen doesn't say protect life at all costs. No. Hifzul nafs is one of the maqasid of the sharia, but hifzul deen comes before that. The protection of our iman is the top priority of every Muslim. Your life comes after that. And so here, to illustrate that point, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah is saying that if we don't get air, water, and die, so be it. The harm will be in this dunya, okay. But if we don't have the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evils of this world, then that will destroy us here and it will destroy us there, and that is far worse than whatever could happen to us in this dunya. So let's get into surahs. Again, I'm not going to spend too much in it, but at least we can get an idea. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. So say, O Prophet ﷺ, I seek refuge with the Lord, with the Rabb of the daybreak, falaq, from the evil of everything he has created, from the evil of the dark night when it penetrates or when it spreads, and from the evil of the women who blow on the knots, and from the evil of an envier when he envies, meaning the person who has hasad, when he is showing that hasad. So al-falaq, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, I seek refuge bi rabbil falaq, from the Rabb of the falaq, of the daybreak. And so the question becomes, well, why falaq? Why the daybreak, and why not the rest of the day or the rest of the time? Here, al-falaq is referring to, in the first ayah here, it's a protection from all things that can cause harm in the dunya. So the falaq is something that spreads over the entire world and everything. So we are seeking refuge from Allah. This is a very general statement, that we seek refuge with you, Ya Allah, Ya Rabb, from everything, min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil that comes from everything that you created. From the evil that comes from everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And then after that, so this is a general statement, and then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he lists out 3 specific things that he wants to point out. So first, there's a general statement asking Allah for protection from everything. So one difference here is that in this surah, Allah is telling us to seek protection from all of the harms of creation of this dunya. And in Surah An-Nas, then he makes it specific there to seek protection from the shayateen and the shaitan, from those effects. So here it's general of the dunya, and then in Nas it's seeking protection from the harms of the akhirah. You can look at it that way. And there's evils in both of those. There's evils that can occur to us in this dunya, and there's evils that are waiting for us in the akhirah. So ta'awudh is to seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are evils in this dunya, there are evils in the akhirah as well, things that will harm us. Our only place of protection is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created it all. No one else will be able to protect us. So the first line, as I said, includes protection from everything. And then the 3 lines after that point out 3 specific things. So for example, the evil of the darkness when it spreads, that's number 1. And then number 2, the evil of the women. We'll talk about why women who blow on the knots. And then number 3 will be the evil from the person of hasad. In a similar way, the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua, وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شُرُورِ أَنفُسِنَا, that we seek refuge with Allah from the shar, from the evil of our own selves, of our own nafs. And so that kind of falls under this criteria where we're looking for protection from the evils of this dunya. So the first thing is the night. And the night is when the shayateen tend to come out. As the sun starts to set, this is when they start coming out. This is why the Prophet ﷺ encouraged at that time to be indoors, to bring your children indoors as well, to protect yourself from the shayateen that are spreading out. Nighttime is usually the time of sin as well. This is when the thieves and criminals come out. They prefer darkness. It hides the wrong that they're doing. People who do sins like zina and drinking and everything and other bad things generally do it at night as well. Again, it's that time of the day that allows it. Youth who get themselves into trouble, them generally during the day, they're in school, they're working, they're busy. But at nighttime, this is when things get different. We have day clubs where you go and you do things that are fairly respectable. And then you have your nightclub. And everyone knows that a nightclub is not something where you're going to do good things. It's something where, for a believer at least, it's going to be a place of haramat and sin. So we seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah tells us to mention falaq specifically because the daybreak is the time when these evils of the night are put to rest. And at that point, we seek refuge from the day. As the sun starts coming up, the shayateen recede and the evil actions tend to go away as well. And my experience in the emergency department is the same thing. That people who do dumb things, people who do illegal things, people who drink and do drugs, they will start to come in as the night starts. And they will continue, and then maybe about an hour or so before Fajr, or around the time of Fajr really, is when they stop. That those people at that point, they've gone back home, the evils have gone away, the shayateen have retired for the night, and so we don't see it as much. And so Allah is asking us to seek refuge with Him from the evil of what He created. The Prophet ﷺ warned us, "Ala inna dunya mal'una," that beware, the dunya is mal'un. It's mal'una. It's something that is cursed. Wa ma fiha, or mal'unun ma fiha, meaning ala inna dunya mal'unatun mal'unun ma fiha. The dunya itself is cursed, and everything within it is cursed as well. Illa dhikrullah, except for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the dunya itself is something that we seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil of those things that you have created. And then afterwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions specifically from the evil of women who blow on knots. So this is referring to sihr, this is referring to magic. And here again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is including it in that category of dunyawi things that can have evil in it and a harm in it. And women are mentioned because women used to be the ones who did magic generally. Because the type of magic that used to be done at the time required most of it, not all of it, most of it required incantations and recitations of certain words. And through those words, it would have an effect on people, or they would be able to control the jinn and get them to do things for them. And so generally it was women who learned this art, who practiced it, who dedicated their days and their nights to doing it. So it's a general statement because in generality, the people who did it were women, but it's not a specific condemnation against women by any means. And then the last ayah is about the evil of the person of hasad, of jealousy. The Prophet ﷺ was sent, one of the main reasons that he was sent for was tazkiyah, was purification, to purify our hearts from diseases like jealousy. Children have it, and as we grow up, it never really goes away. It tends to grow up with us. Before, we used to argue and fight over little cars, Hot Wheels and little toys. And then as we grew older, we started having jealousy over bigger cars and nicer cars. When we were younger, we would have playhouses and things that we would have jealousy over from a child to a child. And then as we got older, we had real houses that we have jealousy from one person to another. So we see that this is something that we generally tend not to let go of for the most part. If we see somebody going above us or having something that we don't have, then we feel like it should be taken away from them, that we would be happier had we seen them not have it. The Prophet says, in the narration it's mentioned, إِنَّ الْحَسَدَ لَيَأْكُلُ الْحَسَنَاتِ كَمَا تَأْكُلُ النَّارُ الْحَطَبِ. That hasad, jealousy, it eats up good deeds the same way that fire eats up wood. It just burns it away. And an interesting thing about using these words is that a person isn't really harmed by jealousy. Your jealousy within you, it doesn't harm you directly. It doesn't harm the other person. I'm sorry. The jealousy within you, it doesn't harm the other person. If that person never comes to know of it, he'll never know of it. And if you don't act on it, then it'll never affect him. But it harms the individual. It burns the individual from inside. It destroys that individual. It makes them cynical. It makes them angry. And so this comes to the way of treating jealousy. So there's two ways of treating jealousy. There's others, but two main ways of treating jealousy. The first is that whatever it is that person has that makes you jealous, give them more of it. And you're now treating your jealousy. Remember, that's the point. So if you see that somebody is praised a lot and respected a lot, then go and praise that person, respect that person in public. Let everyone see you doing that. And it will decrease the jealousy that you have. It'll decrease that nafsi jealousy that you have and bring it down by doing it in public and showing everybody that the praise that you're giving this person, I too am doing the same. Or the other thing that I mentioned is that jealousy can lead to hatred and anger. And so one of the ways of treating it is to give a gift, because gift giving increases love between people. And we saw, jealousy causing anger in the story of Habil and Qabil, that one was jealous towards the other, and that jealousy led to anger, which led to murder eventually. So one of the ways of decreasing jealousy is to give that person a gift so that love develops between the two of you. Give them one. If it doesn't work, give them a second. Give them praise. Give them whatever it is that they have that you dislike. Give them more of it. The point is to treat your nafs, to treat your heart and get that out of you. So just moving along. Surah An-Nas, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. Say, O Prophet, I seek refuge with the Rabb of mankind, the King of mankind, the Malik of mankind, the Ilah, the God of mankind, from the evil of the whisperer, the Khannas, who withdraws, the one who whispers in the hearts of people, whether among the jinn or mankind. So I want you to notice that in Surah Al-Falaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Bi Rabbil Falaq. So he mentioned just one attribute of himself, and that was Rabbul Falaq. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning three attributes about himself. He's calling himself Rabb, then Malik, and then Ilah. So in Surah Al-Falaq, one attribute is mentioned, but then three evils are mentioned specifically. In Surah An-Nas, it's flipped. Three attributes are mentioned of Allah, and only one threat, one specific big threat is mentioned, and that is the jinn in Surah An-Nas. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first one was saying, in a way, saying that showing his attribute of being a Rabb, and that one attribute is sufficient as a reminder for us against all the other evils of the dunya. But when it comes to the shayateen and it comes to the jinn and shaitan, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings three of his attributes to show that this is more dangerous. Rabb, Malik, and Ilah. The Ilah is the one who, you seek refuge with. It is the one with power, stronger, more power than anything else or anyone else. And so you go to that one naturally. And then Malik is the one who is responsible for taking care of you. That this is the one who won't take advantage of you, who won't hurt you in any way. And then Rabb is the one who cares about you, the one who will take care of all of your needs, who will raise you, and so on. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these three attributes of himself. And then afterwards, from the evil of the Khannas. Khannas is that jinn or that shaitan who sneaks away. Never does it to your face. When you're not looking, says something, drops a word, drops an idea, and then runs afterwards. So the shayateen would come, they do come, and they whisper something, a wasawis, into your heart, and then disappear. People do this as well. You know, they're shayateen among the men as well. And people do this as well. They will say something to you in which there is an implication, where there's an insinuation, and they're putting a thought in your head without actually saying it specifically. They don't actually say it, but the idea comes across. And that too is a form of waswasa. And so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us of this very big threat. This is the threat in the akhirah. Surah Al-Falaq was protection from the dunya. Surah Al-Nas is protection from the evils of the akhirah. And that evil will come when we fall prey to the whispers of the shayateen. And so we need to be protected from this. Now, this is the end of the Quran. There's a connection between the end to the very beginning. In Surah Al-Fatiha, we asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. We asked Allah for guidance. Then after that, the entire Quran came as guidance. We asked for it. Allah said, here is guidance. And at the very end of it, now that you have it, you have to work hard to protect your iman and your yaqeen. Seek Allah's refuge from all of the evils so that the Quran can be preserved in your heart, and your actions and your personality walk the walk of the deen. You know, sometimes a person works really hard to accumulate something. For example, they build a home. You know, you build a home from scratch. It's an important part of building something nice is that you protect it as well. So when a house is being built, in the beginning, there's no windows, there's no doors, it's just the outside structure. Getting in and getting out is really easy, but there's nothing really to protect inside of it. So you don't set up an alarm at that time. You don't have guards or anything like that. When a house is under construction in the very beginning, you can walk in whenever you want. It's really nothing to stop you. But once you start putting things that are valuable within it, as that home starts to finish, then you start installing your security system, you start putting doors and windows and locks and all of that. And so the Quran is the most important possession that we have. Once you have it, don't let the shaitan who's waiting there to come and rob you of your deen take it from you. Protect it. With Surah Al-Ikhlas, the house was built. So the entire Quran came to Surah Al-Ikhlas. At that point, this tremendously important lesson that's in Surah Al-Ikhlas about Tawheed is the completion of the teaching of the Quran. The house is built in a way, and it's complete. The attributes of Allah, the way of recognizing Him has been conveyed to you. Now the last two surahs are given to us as a way of protecting all of that. And so we should be in the habit of reciting these two surahs, especially at nighttime, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do. There's another dua, I'm sure many of you know, that goes along with this as well. Bismillahilladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama'i wa huwa as-sami'ul 'alim. The Prophet ﷺ used to recite this dua 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, as a way of protecting himself from the similar things. It's not as powerful as these last two surahs, but we should get into the habit of doing that as well, of reciting the dua, and then at nighttime, Surah Kafirun, Ikhlas, Falaq, and Surah Al-Nas, reciting these, and then blowing on our hands and wiping over ourselves, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do, as a way of protecting us from the evils of this dunya, as well as the evils of the hereafter. So inshallah, with that, I'll stop. This is the completion of Ramadan. series. At least we'll wait to see whether or not we have one more day of Ramadan before Salatul Eid. And so in the meantime, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept everything that we've done, to accept the efforts and forgive the organizers that have put this in place for our benefit, including our young brother Hamza, who has been doing this every single night and organizing it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and his family and forgive them and give them Jannatul Firdaus. As for the rest of the community, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all of us this Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the full reward as if we spent the entire month in the masjid, even though we were prevented from doing that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quickly cause this bala to go away and disappear back to wherever it came from, and then bring us back into the masajid, bring us back together once again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us firm with yaqeen on the deen and make us obedient servants of his, walking on the path of his sharia. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا